So, Paul, I learned a new word this week.
Ooh, I love new words.
The word this week is uremic, which is
Oh,
not to be confused with eurythmics.
I, I was wrong.
Urema, I've been feeling awful for a couple months now, and I don't have a word to describe. The word to describe how I feel is uremic and not eurythmics, because my kidneys don't work. If all goes well, I should begin dialysis this week and my health should improve.
Here's hoping.
Yeah, I'm really feeling it now.
Oof.
So I have played no games. I've done nothing. I watched YouTube video. I didn't really watch YouTube. I experienced YouTube videos all week. I just sat here and just sort of let Google autoplay drivel into my face as a way to pass the
Right.
time between my dozens of naps.
Oh, man.
So I have nothing to report this week.
Okay. Well, I don't really have much to say either. I played a little bit of video game, but we talked about it last week, so I guess it's mailbag time.
All right. We've got quite a few, so we can probably make a show out of these.
Greetings, Paulumus. Or Shawl? So, I assume you have already seen this video by Yahtzee on Prey from a couple of days ago, and this was like a month ago now. And there's a link to a YouTube video. You've already discussed the game. Yahtzee talks about possibilities. Maybe it was too polished for its own good, etc., etc. Do you think it's possible for a game really to be too well crafted for its own good? Have you run into such a thing before? Besides Prey, I guess. No signature. But thank you for the question.
I did not see that. I haven't watched Zero Punctuation in a long time. I don't know, I just sort of drifted away a few years ago, and it's not that the show is terrible. In fact, it's sort of admirable. He's kept up the quality, but, okay, I've seen that content. And I've seen it, and I have just had my fill of it.
Mm. It was always hard for me to
So,
watch it because I have little kids around and the language is not the best. So,
not the sort of thing you want the little tykes repeating.
no, not me anyway.
Take them to a family gathering and they'll blurt some nonsense about how Prey was too polished. It's like, everyone gasps.
To leave in shame.
Yeah. I'm not sure what he means by too polished. I thought it was I thought it was a bit jank, but I mean, you've got to be used to that with immersive sims. Like, they're just really complicated games with a lot of moving parts, and you just gotta, story and shooting and stealth and a bunch of magical powers, and hacking. And it's like, okay, you got a lot of, and crafting. And you got a lot of systems here. There's going to be some jank, and that's okay. So I'm not sure why he called it too polished.
Hmm. But you could imagine a game that was too well polished, like where everything that would make it unique or stand out is just like worn away. It's like this featureless surface.
For me, like, I think my perception of polished is a little different than this person's. When I think of polish, I think of like Valve playtesting, waiting until they see somebody, have some problem. Oh, look, everybody gets turned around and goes the wrong way and gets lost for 15 seconds at the end of this corridor. Or like 80% of the people get turned around and think they're supposed to go this way. Let's change the level to fix that. And so
Hmm.
for me, and I mean, you can really feel when a game is lacking in that kind of polish. You have those moments all the time where you always seem to be off on the wrong foot, doing the wrong thing. The designer is making assumptions that, haven't occurred to you yet. And so overly polished means like Half-Life 2. Um,
Maybe optimally polished.
right, exactly. But what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean by too polished? I guess we needed to watch the Zero Punctuation video to get this one, and I came in unprepared this week. Um,
Despite having
because,
done nothing but watch YouTube videos.
right, but I had no agency in those viewing. I just sort of, other than the drool I got on my shirt, is just, I was not involved.
Well, one slight note, it's extra punctuation now. I don't know why they switched, but...
Oh, he's got 2 series. He's got extra punctuation, which is like he's a video essay series, and then zero punctuation, which is specifically game reviews.
Okay.
Extra punctuation, yeah, is he slows it down and talks more like a normal person and isn't quite as outrageous. It's a little more grounded.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm not sure if I've run into, I guess like some mobile games where it's just like, this is the exact same match 3 experience, but with like slightly,
Oh, yeah.
Mario themed icons or whatever. Like maybe that's too polished.
Yeah, you do get that in games that are heavily monetized. You do feel that you can tell when they're very polished because instead of polishing for quality, they polish for like pressure. And it's just as soon as you hit that point where you go like, oh, that's frustrating. It pops up with a little box going, hey, you want to give me some money and I'll get rid of this frustration? And it's like, oh, wow. They knew exactly when I would run out of these points or want to do this thing or discover this synergy and want to take advantage of it. And they just paywalled it.
Yeah.
But nobody puts that care and attention when the game's just trying to get you to have fun.
I feel like I'm run into a feeling of too much polish when I'm listening to like pop music, where like the song is so produced, like overproduced, I guess is the word that you might use.
Yeah.
Maybe like the Final Fantasy games, like some of the more modern Final Fantasy games were just like so produced that it's like, you could have, but then that's not really polish. I guess there's a difference between like overly produced and over polished.
Actually, I can see that being the ones that are like super linear and it's just almost playing itself. It's just you've sanded off any agency. You've taken away the player's ability to make mistakes and be frustrated by taking away the player's ability to do anything. Yes, you polished it until there wasn't any rough spots, but you also polished out all the interesting bits.
Yeah, all the texture and all the grip. You can't get a grip on it. It's just going where it's going. Well, I guess we had to watch the video. Neither of us have much thought about that. Sorry, whoever wrote that in. Dear Mr. Young and Mr. Spooner, I hope these lines reach you well, and your families are in good health. To cut to the chase, you mentioned that Warcraft 3 spawned several genres, like MOBAs, tower defense. That reminded me reminiscent of the late 90s. Oh my goodness, this is a long one. Do you have any thoughts on that? Oh man, you're not helping us out at all. Are you nostalgic for discovering mods? Okay, here we go. I think it's because mods have already congregated. So he's asking like, one of the cool things about Warcraft 3 was that you download all these mods and it's like, oh, this is a cool one, or this is garbage. But there was always this like kind of, there's like a loot box almost. You get a thing, it's like, is this going to be a cool mod, or is this going to be a cool map? They weren't really mods at the time. And do we feel nostalgic for discovering mods and stuff? I mean, regards, Norbert Coleus Ratus Legal. Coleus Ratus, have you not played Minecraft? Like, mods, discovering new mods is still a thing.
And City Skylines, mods are big. Like City Skylines, I highly recommend playing that with mods. Yeah, so modding's still big. I think what's happened though is, in Factorio modding is huge too, but I think modding has moved from AAA games to the mid-tier stuff. The AA space is where you find all the good modding.
Right. And that, and like we've said before, back in Warcraft 3, there weren't really like open source, publicly available game development systems, that you didn't have any game engines that you could just get. And so Warcraft 3 was the closest thing you had to a game engine that you could just play with.
Right.
So, like, used to be that Warcraft 3 mods were, like, game dev, and now you can just do game dev. You don't have to do mods. So, like, a lot of that innovation and stuff has moved out of the modding space and into just plain old indie dev. And so you don't
Right.
get so much wackiness. You know, people aren't modding Factorio to play a shuffleboard game because you don't have to.
Right. Yeah, I actually
I mean,
think modding is in a pretty good place these days. Like, almost everything in gaming is worse now. People are treated worse. The you know, IP is worse. A lot of great IPs have died. The publishers are worse. The pricing is worse. Um, all of that. The release schedule is worse. But like the modding scene's pretty good. If your game is available to be modded, you're probably pretty happy. Although, I mean, it's like certain game, like nobody's modding, Call of Duty. But
yeah, those are called cheaters, I think.
right, I've made a modded version of Call of Duty where I'm not garbage. Yeah, I think mods are in a really good space these days. One of the few bright spots of gamings these days. And I think Unity is gets some credit for that. Unity is sort of open to modding. I don't actually understand how modding works but like I know City Skylines was written in Unity, and that's the reason that people can make mods for the game. I think there's something about you
Right.
could take the
Yeah.
bytecode and like reverse compile it back into, get something similar to the functionally equivalent to the original source, and then make changes to it and then recompile something like that.
It's also easy for the game developers to allow for modding because you can just say, like, here's a folder with a bunch of C# code, and then like expose some of your variables and stuff and be like, hey, go at it. That's how
Yeah,
modding because it's not really like official mod support. It's just like, we will load your code for you and like make it easy so you don't have to hack in and make the game load it for yourself. That's how
right.
Kerbal Space Program's modding worked. It was just like, this is written in Unity, and it knows how to read C# code, so here's a modding folder. Have fun. But yeah, C# is pretty easy to reverse compile because it's JIT compiled, so it doesn't compile to all the way to machine code. It compiles to this intermediate, uh, like, what is it, bytecode language or something? And
Yeah,
it's
something like
a
that.
pretty straightforward mapping, so you can decompile it and then do a little bit of labeling, and you've basically got yourself a source file. And because the Unity tools are pretty well known, it's not too hard to figure out how they did something unless they're doing something really off base.
Right.
Dear Diecast, I hope you are well. If you could take any single character from any game and put them into any other game, who would you put in which game? Ooh, wow. You could put Seymour from Final Fantasy X in Mass Effect 3, so he and Kai Lang could compete over who's the best villain. You could put Duke Nukem in Silent Hill 2, so he could give Pyramid Head a mighty boot. You could even put Mahbu in Yan Yan Ganyan, Light Fantasy Gaiden. The possibilities are endless. Looking forward to hearing what you come up with. Vale, Tim. Thank you, as always, Tim.
My instinct would be to just put Doom Guy into every military cover shooter out there. Like, oh no,
2016 Doom Marine.
right, the 2016 Doom. So they're like, oh, they're shooting at it, they're throwing hand grenade, pedestrian stuff that this Doom Guy laughs off. And, you just leap up in the air and air dash over and slam down on one of them. And actually like, oh wow, look, this game's suddenly fun. It's fun if you move around instead of staying in the same freaking place and, playing whack-a-mole when they pop their heads out of cover.
How about 2016 Doom Marine in Wolfenstein the New Colossus? And just watch everything explode.
Oh, yeah.
Have someone play out the player's fantasy of just like not wanting to pay attention to any of this nonsense.
Right. Right. Yeah, to put Doom Marine in a story-based game. Put Doom
Yes.
Marine in Mass Effect 3. Oh, Commander Shepard, we're so glad you're here. And he just shoves them out of the way and starts shooting crap. Kai Lang ninja jumps into the scene and is immediately obliterated with the chainsaw to the face.
And explodes into little balls of light and loot.
Yes. Doom Marine doesn't even break stride, just keeps going. That would be pretty fun.
Hmm. I guess it kind of depends on what the mechanics do around the character, right? Like the fun of it is that you kind of imagine the character bringing the mechanics of their game with them to a certain degree. And so it's like, what mechanics would be fun to have in this other game?
I would like to go back to the 1990s Lara Croft and put her into the modern Tomb Raider games. Like, I want the gameplay of the modern Tomb Raider games. I like the gameplay better. The shooting was pretty terrible in those old games. It was just very floating and unsatisfying, and the platforming was just super jank. But the character was having fun, you know, and the new Lara Croft is always like such a scared little girl. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? One guy is after me, and then, you know, gameplay starts and you kill 50 dudes. And then she's like, oh no, a, an angry dog. What am I going to do? And it's like, dude, what is your problem, lady? Just murder them. So I would like to take the old Laura and bring her into the new games where she could just like do some one-liner and just let me get back to shooting crap.
Yeah, she was like the too cool for school Laura, who was just like, none of this phases me. World weary. You feel like she was chain smoking at some point, but she's like, she doesn't have time for it anymore.
Right. Now, she was arguably a horrible person. But, like, so was Duke Nukem. It's less about playing as a good person and more about playing as somebody who just seems to be having a good time.
Yeah. Sociopaths enjoy themselves a lot, you know.
Right.
Sometimes you just want to be playing a sociopath in a game with, you know, a bunch of guns and infinite ammo.
There's one. Duke Nukem in Max Payne's world. There's another one that would just completely obliterate the tone of the world. Like, mopey Max Payne, all sad about things. You just replace him with wisecracking Duke Nukem, who just shoots people while quoting 80s movies. And just completely break the world.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, almost anybody you put into any Bethesda game will be a massive improvement. Kratos in Skyrim.
Oh, he would so fit in.
Right? He would fit in. It would just be like, oh, you're just way more interesting than the generic empty hole they left for the player.
Yeah. Oh, that would be sweet. Yeah, any Bethesda game. Let's see, who would be the Fallout 3 character you want to... It wouldn't have to be like playing as them. It could just be like playing alongside or even against them.
Right.
Handsome Jack. Make Handsome Jack the villain of any Bethesda game, really.
Yeah. Yeah, Fallout 4, it's pretty easy to make an improvement by changing literally anything. You could replace Preston Garvey with the companion cube, and immediately the game would be that much wittier. Like, there would be no dialogue from this secondary character, which would be a massive improvement over the incredibly irritating and boring dialogue from Preston Garvey.
And you'd still be carrying him the whole way, either way.
Right? He would be exactly as useful. You know, the companion cube would have the same utility.
There we go. We've invented a new benchmark for game characters. Would they be improved by being replaced by the companion cube from Portal? The companion cube test.
Like, I want to replace Sean, the main villain, but I mean, he's like tied to the main character. Like, the story doesn't make any sense if you replace him, but like, you know, he's just such an awful quasi-villain, and he's so uninteresting.
We could just go full Portal 2 and replace Sean with GLaDOS, replace Preston Garvey with Companion Cube.
Yeah. Oh, just replace Sean with Wallace Breen. And then replace, like, the Brotherhood's leader with GLaDOS.
There you go. The Brotherhood of Steel is the, I don't know, the Combine, I guess?
I guess, yeah.
Forget it. Just make Half-Life 2 again.
Yeah. Okay, so we've just made open world Half-Life 2. And it is, of course,
but with the Companion Cube, I think that's an improvement.
Yeah. I'm just gonna, I'm creating the Kickstarter now. I'm sure there will be no legal difficulties getting this made.
It's probably in the public domain by now. So long ago.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Valve has probably forgotten about it, so they'll be like, they won't come after us because they'll have forgotten they own it.
Do we have that? I don't know. We own everything, I guess. Huh. Is there any games that would be improved by, like, putting a really serious character into goofy, wacky town? Like something in maybe, I don't know, Stardew Valley. Like Max Payne in Stardew Valley. Would that be fun?
BJ Blazkowicz, the new Wolfenstein in Stardew Valley.
There you go.
He just narrates to him, gets into town. These people, these are simple people. They can't help me. Nobody can help me.
Nice.
He just sits out on his farm all day, cradling a shotgun. Is he gonna plant some crops or whatever?
He could be an NPC, actually. I mean, that'd be kind of fun.
Oh, yeah, he'd be like a crazy guy in town. Like, you got all the normal people in town, and then there's just BJ that always sits on his porch and is like, asks everybody if they've seen any Nazis.
The only gift he likes is weapons, explosives.
Right. He just convinced Nazis are going to show up any minute now. And he wants to let everybody know he's absolutely ready, and that if you see any Nazis, you should tell him right away. That's how he opens every conversation. Oh, is it Nazis here yet? No, I baked you this pie.
Hello, Seamus and Paul. What are your views on using an SAT solver to play Factorio? And there's a link to a GitHub project that uses an SAT solver to play Factorio. Is this heresy? Or is it a word from the gods beyond? Is it the advent of a dark age? Or the new enlightenment? Is it an evil of an old world? Or the virtue of a new future? Take care. Thank you, person.
Person who had a stroke while trying to type your name.
That's right.
Okay, hang on. Let me look up SAT solver. Okay, I get it. See, that doesn't sound like heresy to me at all. That just sounds like taking it to the next level. That's like automating your automation. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Like it's, I mean, that's kind of the whole game, is at first you just automate the grunt work of running around gathering things with belts, and then you automate the gathering and centralization and processing of stuff, and then you automate the secondary stuff, and then you automate that with blueprints where you've got entire sections of the factory, and then you automate that with robots that build stuff like when you need it and when you don't. I've seen people, you know, set up complex robot builds where it's like, oh, the power's dipping, so I'll clear out this thing that takes a lot of electricity and build some extra solar panels. And, oh, you've got extra power, let me get rid of... So as you have ebb and flow in your base, like the robot, the base itself can adapt to the needs. And you just automate more and more and more stuff until there's absolutely nothing for you to do. You just sit there in the middle and rockets launch every, minute and a half. So an SAT solver is just another, layer.
So is this for automation? Routing, or what is this used for?
I'm not, okay, it's an SAT solver is a computer program that aims to solve a problem of, is this thing doable or not doable?
Mm.
It solves a Boolean variable. It can't like, so I'm not sure how useful that would be in Factorio, but I'm sure there's a very obvious use that's just not occurring to me. Like, for me, the first thing I think of is using some sort of solver for balancing problems. Oh, you need 7 of these machines for every 13 of these machines. And arriving at that by trial and error would have taken forever and would be very annoying. But having having some sort of system that's constantly figuring out that balancing for you, would be very helpful. Maybe I'm misunderstanding how, well, I'm not understanding how you would use an SAT solver to help, but that doesn't change the fact that it sounds totally legit to me. It just sounds like another layer of automation, which that's the whole point of the game.
Looks like on the GitHub project, there's a bunch of examples, and they're all conveyor belts. It looks like some of them are like automatic load balancers, and some of them are like reordering conveyor belts, so you can like shuffle the order of inputs and outputs or something.
Interesting. That's cool. I do kind of have a fondness for ridiculously complicated belt setups, like the setup to take two saturated belts of inputs into, say, 3 evenly spaced, evenly balanced belts is actually kind of stupid and ridiculous. Like, it's got a huge footprint and, belts going over and under and around each other, just because getting the load evenly balanced across them is challenging. But
Yeah,
I just love that once it's built, it just makes me so happy just watching that flow.
it looks like they can do it with one underground belt and 4 distributors. It's the top left corner example on the GitHub.
It's cool. I love it.
Dear Diecats, yes, I'm going to leave that amusing typo in. We all know of the phenomenon of replaying player/moral choice heavy games and still always picking the same options that we did on our very first playthroughs, but me being out on a bender of player choice heavy games like Yes Your Grace and The Life and Suffering of Sir Brant, which I can both recommend, I replayed Banner Saga. Now, excuse my slight spoiler to a 6-year-old game, but at the end of the game, you have to make a somewhat hidden decision which either had the main character Rook or his daughter Alette survive the final battle. And when I played it first in 2016, I remember reloading an earlier save so that Rook survived, since I identified stronger with him than with Alette, which was more of a side character in the story, and I didn't want to lose him for the sequels. But between now and then, I have become a father of 2, and it became impossible for me to even entertain the thought of sacrificing Alette in my most recent playthrough. So, have
Yes.
you had shifts in your life that affected your moral compass in a way that made it perceptible via the moral choices in games? Kind regards, Norbert Coelius Legal. Thank you again.
Yes. Once I became a father, I became incredibly sensitive to, children being hurt in games. And it wasn't right away. I remember, okay, this is really dark to me now. The very first Fallout game let you kill kids. Like, there were kids in the game world and you could target them. And I remember just sort of like going on a bender to see what happened and blowing away everybody in the hub, including all the kids. And didn't think
Mm.
anything of it. It's just, I'm experimenting with a game system. Uh, it was very abstract, very impersonal for me. Just sort of, well, what happens if you do this? To the Stanley Parable, what happens if I go through the wrong door kind of feeling. And then, and I was a new father at that point, when I played the first Fallout game. But over the next few years, I became incredibly sensitive to that sort of thing. And I just, as the years went on, it became more and more uncomfortable to me to see children hurt in any way. And now I'll shut a game off. Okay, I'll reload if a child gets hurt while I'm playing. Not that I hurt them, but just like, oh no, a kid got hurt. in, you know, in the background. Somebody else hurt them. I'm like, no, I can't deal with this.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sensitive to it. And,
Does some kid from Fallout 3 qualify yet? Or is that
no,
still below
he
the
doesn't.
threshold?
Yeah, he's way below the threshold. I could blow him
Okay.
away while humming show tunes.
And how
Actually,
about Little Lamplight?
huh. You know, actually, I would have a hard time. I mean, yeah, I really,
They're invincible anyway, but yeah.
right. They're invincible. I just, they're not even real kids. They're ridiculous. They're Todd Howard wearing a child's mask and taunting you. And
Right.
it's still hard for me to contemplate, like, going into combat mode to attack them.
Reverse pickpocketing, hand grenades, it's not going to happen.
Not for me, no.
So is there anything else? I mean, other than children?
Um, I don't know how it would, I don't know how it would affect game. I am less, interested in games where you win the girl. Like, that's a very appealing thing to do when you're young. And that's kind of the adventure you're on as a young man. And that's very boring to me now. Like,
Right.
what is she even like? Is she even wife material? We don't know anything about her except what she looks like in those booty shorts. I don't know if I want to go out with her.
Yeah,
Right?
she's going to be a crazy person. It's like in 20
Right?
years? I don't think that she's going to stick around.
Right? Yeah, she seems like bad girlfriend material. She's just attractive and nothing else, and that's dangerous. You don't want that in your life. Yeah, so like you're trying to help the hero win the girl, but she's, you know, as when you're young, you're like, oh, a hot babe. All right, I want to impress her. And as an old guy, you're like, that is a waste of time. Stay away from her.
It's danger. Danger.
That doesn't come up that
I can
often
see
these
it.
days in games. Yeah, like
Yeah, unfortunately, well, I mean, I guess there's a whole genre of games, but that's is
yeah,
not very
you're
much
right.
gameplay there.
Right. I think that's what happened to that, is it kind of became its own, it sort of broke off into visual novels and stuff, but that used to be like the plot of every action game is defeat evil and get the girl. And then everybody, you know, not everybody wants to get the girl. Some people don't even like girls.
Right.
And so they were like, well, this is kind of limits our story and the appeal of it if we shove you into this role that you don't like. So let's get rid of that. So yeah, that became its own genre. So you don't see it that much. But when it does come up, I am much less interested. In fact, I regard it with a bit of eye rolling.
Right. This young man's game.
Right? It's like you pull up to an intersection as a young man and somebody's beside you and they rev their engine. They want to race you and you're like, oh, I've got to show this guy. And as an old guy, you're like, yeah, you go ahead and screw up your insurance, kid. My premiums are nice and low and I'm happy. This thing gets 60 miles to the gallon. I'm super happy. I don't need to race you to prove anything.
Do you know how much tires cost?
Right? Do you know how much a ticket
You probably
costs?
don't buy your own tires, but, you know, when you peel out in those things, that takes like 1,000 miles off every time.
Right? So yeah, very, very much like that's irresistible as a young man. It's like, oh, he's challenging me. And as an old man, you're like, get out of here, kid. You're ridiculous.
Don't have anything to prove.
Right. I literally don't care what you think of me. I know what I'm all about now. And I'm all about low insurance premiums and good gas mileage.
Dear Diecast / Seamus, it is surely low-hanging fruit, and apologies if you have already mentioned this, but have you considered doing an analysis of Star Trek Picard series?
Absolutely
I've been
not.
Indulging.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
No, but go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
I've been indulging in watching. It seems like the writing issues, a tonal shift from classic Star Trek and Mass Effect sequels, levels of nonsense. Found myself wondering if what technically has been done to the type of story it is telling versus TNG or other Trek in terms of details first versus drama first and character first driven versus plot driven analysis. It occurred that it would be good to hear your story / writing analysis on the series. All the best, PPX 14. Thank you. I'm assuming you're an android of some kind.
All right. So I have this thing, I don't know if you, I hope I don't offend anybody, but there are certain movies made by Christians for Christians, like the God's Not Dead movie. And they're incredibly heavy-handed movies, right? The author has something that they want to say, and they do not know how to say it with subtlety. And so the movies have a very heavy, clumsy hand. And I've always been personally embarrassed by this. As a Christian myself,
Yeah.
I felt like it kind of sucks that my team is so bad at this.
You imagine it's like, well, there's a trope for, and TV tropes is anvilicious, I believe, is the trope that falls into.
I've never heard of it. Anvilicious. Does it have to do with
like,
anvils?
Yeah, drop an anvil on the head of the audience, right? It's just like, no subtlety, just drop an anvil on them.
Right, Red Letter Media well, I'll get to there. Anyway, and it was sort of an embarrassment that it felt like the only movies that really hit this really low bar of being like incredibly heavy-handed and preachy and obvious and just like the fakest dialogue in the world was all Christian stuff, and I was just personally embarrassed by it. But that is what Star Trek Picard is. It is that level. It is that level of awfulness, of just whoever wrote this is not a writer, does not understand subtlety, does not understand allegory, imagery, metaphor, messaging, or themes. They just know how to take the Red Letter Media guys, compared it to Gallagher, just, sledgehammering watermelons. And it's still embarrassing. It's so bad, it's embarrassing. It's incredible. Now, I haven't watched entire episodes. I've watched the clips, but it is so bad. I would never be able to sit through it. It would just make me lose my mind. And the real pain of it is, like, the original, or TNG was actually pretty good at this stuff. At like, okay, here's a modern day political debate. And we're going to like take the red state, blue state thing and transpose it to this alien race and have them sort of interrogate this question on their planet in their context. And it wasn't always great or brilliant or fair, but I thought it was at least interesting. It was an interesting way to consider these topics.
Right, and they very rarely took a side, because there was this whole thing in Star Trek about, in Starfleet, that you're not allowed to take a side in these, like, primitive cultures or whatever. So they were kind of restrained in universe from being like, you're right and you're wrong, and because I say so, or because it's obvious or whatever.
Right, and the new one has them time traveling back to the 20th century, and it just hits, just sledgehammer every modern day hot button topic: immigration, climate change, income inequality, and everybody on the show is just so in agreement and congratulating each other for being from the brilliant future where people don't make mistakes and not these stupid, primitive... I mean, think of it this way. Imagine if you and I went back to, 400 years ago, and we're like, oh, these people are such idiots. Oh, they're doing leeching. Can you believe how stupid these people are? They're not, like, advanced and enlightened like you and me that know better than to do leeching. Like, this sort of arrogance that comes just... You only know that because you're from the future and somebody else figured it out for you. Like, even if I buy the premise of your argument, your arrogance is disgusting.
Your industrial revolution isn't half as good as ours. Like, what's with all these steam engines? Haven't you invented internal combustion yet?
Right? These guys don't even know about nuclear power. What losers.
Man.
So, like, the whole thing is cringe and embarrassment and sort of goes against everything that I think Trek used to be good at. And just in the name of this horribly fan service heavy, you know, just like trying to do this greatest hits, like, of course the Borg are there. So Star Trek is dead. Star Trek is absolutely dead. It's just disgusting how bad Picard is.
There we go. You got your analysis. Dear Diecast, I am really enjoying the long-form critique from the Rocketeer on Final Fantasy XII, despite having never played the game. Like Seamus's retrospectives, it has been deeply interesting and insightful. Read that has opened my eyes to/helped illuminate a number of useful concepts and mental models clothed in a highly amusing snark and wit. So I was wondering if there were any plans or a possibility that he'd do more write-ups for the blog afterward, Final Fantasy related or otherwise. I hope Seamus is doing better and is getting what he needs to help recover. Warm wishes, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew.
I don't know. I think this write-up was a lot of work for him. He put in a lot of work and he wrote it and rewrote it over the years. I don't know that he's got another one of these in him.
Challenge, huh?
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing more of his stuff too. I'm a fan too. It just, you know, has he got... The question isn't would I be open to it. It's like, the question is, does he got any more?
There we go. Has he been on the show yet? You should have him on sometime. That'd be fun. Maybe when the series is over.
Yeah.
Dear Diecast, considering the season finale is this week, and while I'm not sure when you guys record, what are your thoughts on Marvel's Moon Knight show? Love, Bumpkin. Thanks, Bumpkin.
I hated it. I didn't hate it. I love Oscar Isaac. I just think he's amazing. So I got to see him. Like, for me, one of the great frustrations of the new Star Wars movie is there was just never enough Poe Dameron. And it kept cutting away to, like, anyone else. And I was always like, who cares about this? Let's go back to Poe. Poe's just the best. So getting to see Oscar do his thing and he get to do wacky accents and play multiple characters was fun. But I had no interest in the story itself. I thought it was just dumb. Yeah. You know what? I don't even want to interrogate. Like, I don't even want to tear it apart. It spent the two penultimate episodes where he's trapped in a dream world. And it's a big climax of the plot, and then we slam on the brakes for 2 entire episodes. While he sorts out stuff inside his head. And it's all a dream, and the only thing that happens is we discover what his dual personality problem is. And all the reveals are stupid. Like, it finally answers the question, and the answer is just dumb, and doesn't make any sense, and doesn't fit with what we've been told before, and totally doesn't work for me. And, I was just not into it. I was bored. I was so bored. I fast-forwarded through a lot of it. And then the end was just a big, dumb CGI fight. But, I mean, I like the idea of the Moon Knight character. It's just the story they told with it. It felt like this character could be better in a different story. It's kind of like, what if I saw Falcon and the Winter Soldier series without having seen any Captain America? I would think, oh, I hate this character. But meanwhile, you know, after seeing the Marvel movies, I love Falcon. Love that guy. I just hated this one story they told with him. And that's how I feel like about Moon Knight. I hated this story, but I feel like they could tell a great story with this character.
So I take it, I know nothing about Moon Knight. I didn't even know it was a thing. I take it this is some sort of like superhero that has split personality problem or something?
Yeah. He's split personality problem, and you don't know why. He's just multiple people in one head. And they have different accents. And one of them's married and one of them isn't. I mean, these guys live totally different lives. And Moon Knight serves Khonshu, who is an Egyptian god, and that's where he gets his... So it's all about Egypt and Egyptology and Egyptian ruins and Egyptian gods. And okay, we haven't delved... We've got Norse gods in there, and we've got, stuff from every other myth. Why don't we just throw some Egypt stuff in there too?
Okay.
Yeah, it's I kind of don't like that Moon Knight is made entirely out of CGI. He's a guy in a white cloak, but he's wrapped up like a mummy. And, like a mummy with a hood and a cape kind of look. And he's just made entirely of CGI, so you can never see the actor's face. And so it feels like when it goes into superhero mode, I feel like I'm watching an animated show. It feels like I'm watching a cartoon, and I don't know if that's the character design, or if the CGI is cheap, or if that's just what happens when, it's kind of like the Green Lantern movie. It was just, you made the character too much CGI.
Huh. Yeah, we finally found the problem when the director can just do whatever they want, right? It's like, well, you kind of get disconnected from reality at some point. Seems like an easy costume, though. I mean... It's like a white bed sheet and then like a colored towel or something and a hat.
Well, the bandages just sort of like wrap, like the bandages are animated, like they just sort of come from behind him and wrap all around him all of a sudden when he transforms. And that's kind of cool. All of these strands reaching out like, I don't know, Medusa hair or whatever. Just all of these different things wrap around him real quick. But then once he's fully wrapped up in his costume, it's like, couldn't that be practical? Well, can't you make that?
And it's not like Sandman or something. You just make a costume. Right. Huh. Oh well. Dear Diecast, does Seamus still read other blogs? If so, any suggestions? Namely to do with gaming and storytelling, but other recommendations are also welcome. All the best, Andrew. Again, thank you again, Andrew.
You know what? I don't. I should. I sort of lost track of some... Well, I used to follow a few gaming blogs, and they died or went dormant, and I quit reading them. But I think there were more now than there were, like, 8 years ago. Like, I think blogs have kind of made a very slight return. And they're not as dead as they used to be. And I should definitely go looking for game dev blogs. I'll bet there's a lot out there that's really good that I just haven't been reading and really I've been on YouTube. Like, what kind of hypocrite am I? I'm like, I write a blog and I lament how all the action's on YouTube and everybody wants to see videos and nobody wants to read anymore, but I'm doing the same thing.
Well, and also like we talked about last week, it's much lower investment and, time-wise for a developer to make a video or live stream while they're developing rather than write a blog post. So, I mean, you get more out of it and they get more out of it. And so it seems like just kind of a win all around.
Yeah, if you're doing unedited, just like a live stream footage, yeah, that is pretty low effort compared to writing a blog post. Although I don't really watch that stuff. I watch video essays. I watched one, somebody mentioned it recently, I thought it was here in our mailbag, but the one from H Bomber Guy on Deus Ex was really good.
Oh yeah, I seem to remember someone brought that up somewhere.
It was over an hour long, but it was super good. It's like Deus Ex Human Revolution is fine, and here's why. And normally this game is awesome, and here's why, or this game is garbage, and here's why. And this one is fine, and here's why, which sounds like a bad, like, how interesting is that to say, to analyze how something is good enough? But it was actually a really good essay. I was really into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's hard to do, right? It's easy to find something to hate and easy to find something to love. Well, I mean, hopefully. But to find, it's like, this is complicated, and it ends up being just kind of medium, and like, there's a lot of ways it could have been better in this way, and a lot of ways it could have been worse in the other ways.
Yeah.
Dear Diecast, I hope you're doing well. I don't know if you have heard, but SqEnix just sold its Western franchises to the company that owns THQ Nordic and Saber Interactive. Most notably, the deal includes Tomb Raider, Thief, Deus Ex, and The Legacy of Kain. The last one is the one I'm personally most excited about. In fact, it's the only gaming news of recent years that's made me actually excited. But what do you think? Did SqEnix do the right thing, especially at the low price point? Are you optimistic about the future of the series? Keeping awesome, Lino! Thanks, Lino!
Well, it's good anytime somebody that doesn't want a franchise gives it to somebody who does.
Let's hope so, yeah. I mean, unless they were just getting as part of the package, right?
I love how SqEnix has just been a mess lately. They made that Avengers game that was just like monetized to hell. And it's just a nightmare. Like, their monetization stuff has been awful late. Or wait a minute, maybe that's... Am I confusing SqEnix with Sony? Oh, I can't remember now. Let me look it up before I make a fool of myself. Okay, no, I was right. Okay. Just second guessing myself there. I thought, oh wait, is that Sony? No, it was SqEnix. And I like how they didn't... They sold all the stuff that they owned, so now all they have left is the crap they've ruined.
What kind of a plan is that?
Right? I don't know. I mean, they've still got, like, Final Fantasy and stuff, I'm sure. But yeah, all their Western stuff that's not licensed. Which, that was their best stuff, really. So I am mildly optimistic for these things. Not that I think, oh, everything's going to be great now. But all of these things have better odds of being good now than before they were sold. SqEnix is just off the rails. I don't know what they're doing. Their priorities are a mess. They don't seem to know what their customers want. They seem to have forgotten how to make video games. Like, was there a management change up in the last decade? Because they just, like, suddenly are unable to make games. And they used to, like, make fantastic games. And the big thing that they've made recently that's good is Guardians of the Galaxies, which I was initially positive on, but then I thought, that was okay. But it wasn't really... It was a very expensively made, extremely linear, very story-heavy game. I don't know that it was worth it.
Man, and now we could possibly get a late 90s Garrett team up with late 90s Lara Croft made by Coffee Stain Studios.
Oh man, I'm down for that. I'd love to see them take Lara in a slightly new direction. I think they've kind of got themselves into a rut here. But they sold the developer. So the developer is theoretically coming with the property, I believe, if I understand how this sell-off works. They didn't just sell off their IP, they also sold the studios that make that IP. So you could end up just with more of the same.
Yeah, that's true.
But then maybe one of the reasons these games were kind of lackluster was maybe due to pressure from Square Enix. So it's really hard to know. It will be very telling when 3 years from now, when the first of these new breed of games comes out that were made entirely by under the umbrella of the new publisher, we'll see what the change in management, what effect it has on the games, and that'll be interesting.
Right, yeah. Hopefully they're not all NFT games.
Right. Well, I think SqEnix was the thing interested in NFTs.
That's true. That's true.
So, yeah.
Hopefully they can iron all that out by the time they release them.
Right.
Yeah, so I think we're in agreement that SqEnix, whether or not they did the right thing for themselves, they did the wider community a big favor, letting go of this stuff.
Right. If you don't want it, let us have it. Better than, just throwing it in the IP graveyard, like EA.
Yeah, don't give it to EA.
That's what EA does. They're like, oh, we can't make money with this, so let's just close the studio and throw the IP in a drawer and never use it again. And it's like, maybe somebody else could take that idea and make something with it. You fool.
But we're the industry leader for creativity. How could anyone else do a better job? Dear Diecast, I hope you are doing well. Man, everyone's wishing us well. I can only assume they mean you. I was just wondering what you think makes for good world building. Do you think there are any fundamental principles or good rules of thumb for stories in general in this regard, if world building is to be taken seriously? Also, I came across a video that used the term silent world building. From that alone, any idea what it means to you? Kind regards, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew.
I am shy to make broad declarations on what is good or bad world building in sort of a macro sense, because you know there's all sorts of world building, and it sort of depends on the game. Like, some games just don't need much, and some games need tons of it.
Okay, but he's asking specifically if the world building is to be taken seriously. So if you want someone to take your world building seriously, like, what do you got to do? Is there anything you got to watch out for?
I mean, you just go back to first principles of what do they eat? You know, what do they do? What do they eat? How does their society work?
Yeah. An average person, they wake up in the morning, what do they do before they go to bed?
What do they do all day? Do they stand in front of their house all day and do nothing but wait for adventurers to come by so that they can ask them to go and fetch things? Or do they have some purpose for existing? Do people have jobs? Is there an economy? You don't have to, like, design the whole thing, but have a feel for, like, what's going on. Why does this town exist?
Answer the basic questions. These anime bunny girls that are standing around in their lingerie all day. Why?
Right?
I think internal consistency is it's just kind of a basic thing. It's like it has to make sense, at least with itself. Like, it could be nonsense in regards to real life, but at least it has to, like, maintain some consistency with itself.
Right. You can make a world where everybody just, like, you know, has a little 1 meter square garden out in front of their house, and that somehow grows enough food for them to eat. And if you say, hey, on this planet, that's just how it works. And nobody needs to spend much time farming, and everybody spends it doing something else, that's fine. Just imagine how that works and allow for it when you design your world. Don't tell us this is the real world.
And then don't ever put any sieges in the game, because, like, that's not going to work. Can't siege somebody who can grow all their own food in a 1 meter square garden.
Right? Siege would just turn into, we're going to annoy them and not let them take vacations.
And then I think too, for, like, world building beyond just, like, the basic mechanical world building of, like, social world building, is to, like, have real disagreements about, like, between different cultures about what the world is really like. So, like, there's some underlying reality that's consistent, but then, like, the way that people think about that reality should really have some really deep disagreements. Because when everyone's just like, oh, this is how it is, and we all agree that everything should be like this, and then there's this one bad guy who disagrees or whatever, like, that's not believable. There are real disagreements in real societies, and if you want it to be taken seriously, you have to come to grips with that, or at least portray some degree of understanding.
People in this area revere farmers because they, like, keep us all alive, and they're just the best people. You know, you see a farmer and you tip your hat to him, and it's good luck. And then the people over here despise farmers. They work in the dirt all day. They shovel manure. It's gross. It's lowly work that can be done by any simpleton. And, like, there's a difference, and that would immediately create a rift between those two cultures.
Yeah. But then you'd better have the guys who hate farmers, like, be really good hunters or something.
Right. Well, they would have an underclass of people that just can't do anything else.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. A lot of forced labor farms. A lot of prisoners with jobs.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you think about what that would do to the moral center. Okay, you've got prisoners with jobs is part of your economy. That's going to change how your people think about others. And, you know, that's going to affect their... If you've got to, like, spend a good part of your day sort of suppressing your capacity for compassion, that might make a more hard-hearted society. Or it might make a society where you want to keep lots of stuff hidden, where the average person doesn't want to know how the sausage is made, literally.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. Like, that one difference can spiderweb out and all this other stuff. So you come up with a couple differences like that, and you make a few different cultures and a few different areas, and you have them have low opinions of each other, because that's the way it always is. You talk to rural people, and they always have all these terrible opinions of people that live in cities, and then you go into the city, and the people in the cities just think so little of people that live in rural areas, and they blame each other for all their problems, and, you know, rich versus poor, urban versus rural.
Yeah. And then I guess another pointer I would offer is don't make too many diversions from reality. Like, departures. Don't take too many departures from reality, because at a certain point, it becomes impossible for you to think about all the consequences of those departures, and then your world building will fall apart, no matter how much work you put into it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I'll just make it so everybody can grow enough food for themselves in a 1 meter square, and then you'd, like, need to write a siege, and then somebody comes, and you just, well, sieges happen in the real world, I'll just have a siege here, and then somebody comes along and sees your game world, and they're like, but why would that be a threat? Because,
yeah,
you know, the problem of a siege is
you could keep track of one thing, right? Like, you could probably do the 1 meter square garden, but, like, you do that and, like, 4 different sentient races and, like, space travel, and it's just like, no, it's too much. It's too much.
Miraculous healing, and you've got this fantastical season cycle.
Sure, yeah, yeah. Magic, I mean, like, you know, natural magic or whatever, yeah.
Right. And yeah. Oh, Kung Fu is real, and, you know, somebody can chop a tree in half. And then then somebody's like, well, then, wait, where do you pay lumberjacks, and why do they need to spend all day chopping down a tree? When you could just hire these karate chopping dudes. Why are these karate chopping dudes unemployed? Your world makes no sense. Yeah. Once you get too many fantastical elements, it all gets away from you.
Yeah, which, again, is fine if you don't mind your world building not being taken seriously. But if you want it to be taken seriously, you've got to keep a handle on that, because it will get away from you. It's combinatorial, right? Like, every departure from reality combines with every other departure in ways that you won't expect.
Right. Now, if you just want to make Borderlands where it's like, this world makes no sense, but nobody cares because it's ridiculous. It's fundamentally ridiculous. That's fine. But if you're trying to make Dragon Age, then you've got to be careful.
Okay. Silent world building. What does that mean?
I don't know. Maybe nobody stops and tells you. Maybe there's no exposition. Like, nobody opens up a map and's like, 1,000 years ago, the Great Rings, you know, these guys fought over it, and the Dragon Lords came, and somebody made this sword that solves problems, and you're like, that would be loud world building. But silent would be you just exist in the world and sort of absorb it as you journey around, which, Witcher 3 then would qualify as that. Like, I didn't know anything about the world of The Witcher going into Witcher 3, and sometimes my ignorance came back to bite me, but a lot of the time I was able to figure out and get a feel for what was going on without somebody saying, okay, now here, let me explain who these guys are.
Yeah, without the fairy coming on the horn every 2 minutes.
Hey, listen.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page. To me, silent world building sounds a lot like environmental storytelling, where you're conveying information to the player or to the audience without being explicit about it, by just placing it in front of them and letting the audience figure it out.
Yeah, that's how I interpret that too.
Going back to Half-Life 2, very much silent world building, right? Like, nobody says the Combine are evil and we're trying to fight them, right? It's just like, hey, come over this way.
Right. It's, nobody stops. And in fact, this frustrates people. They're like, They get off the train and they're like, okay, well, how long have the Combine been running things, and like, how did they take over, and what did that look like? And the game's just like, it's a fascist, it's space fascists. You get the idea. What do you need to know here? You're writing a book?
No, you're not. You've got a crowbar.
You've got a crowbar, and in a minute you're going to have a gun. You will have all the tools you need for dealing with space fascists.
Well, I think we did it. That was the last mailbag.
Nicely done. I can't believe we got through the whole thing. Well, thanks so much to everybody who sent in questions. I'm glad we finally got through them all. If you've got a question for the show, our email is diecast@SeamusYoung.com. You can see that email address in the image at the top of this post on my blog. Yeah, so send us some new questions. Thanks for listening, everybody. Say goodbye, Paul.
Goodbye! Oh, I don't know if you mentioned it, but one of those mailbags, you're going to turn into an article. So if your question wasn't answered, it's because Jameis is going to give it special treatment.